Hello, this is Daniel Piña, and welcome to Friday on Film Street, where we talk about our favorite movies and genres. We go in depth behind the scenes and tell fun facts of the movies we talk about. And today's guest is Jonathan Piña. Thank you for joining me on the first episode of Friday on Film Street. How are you doing?
Fine, fine, and you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So, what is your favorite movie genre?
My favorite movie genre is horror.
Oh, mine's horror too. Why is it your favorite?
It's my favorite because you tend to see uh, stuff that you don't normally get to see, or you get to root for the villain most of the time, or sometimes it just hits you. Uh, Sometimes you're going through it, and you just want to see it, see another some other people go through it as well.
Well, I like horror a lot more too because I like the thrill of getting scared, and I like having that thrill when I'm at night thinking of that movie, like having trouble to go to sleep or being in that situation just gives me sometimes chills. Sometimes gives me chills. Yeah.
I just like horror movies in general, from the 1920s all the way to now. From the one of the greatest of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is a 1921 German film, uh, Dracula, 1931, that uh, bring back the audience to the cinemas because of due to the Great Depression. Nobody was going through it until Dracula. Once again, horror movies came back and saved the filming industry. And then going back to the 50s with Creature from the Black Lagoon, same thing. Theater was going down. Creature from the Black Lagoon came out, starting helping them again. Came back with the 70s with Texas Chainsaw Massacre on 74, and Halloween on 77, I believe. John Carpenter's Halloween, same thing. It revived the horror and the cinema in total.
Also, you really know about horror and movies.
I know, I know a lot of history on horror.
So, knowing that you know a lot about your history, what's your favorite horror movie?
It depends. If it's just if I want to recommend a good horror movie to people, I would like to say The Exorcist, 1973. It's a
Alright.
perfect slow burn. At the very end, the last 30 minutes of the film's where it peaks. That's where a lot of people tend to have nightmares, including the people from the 70s when the movie came out. People were uh, running out of the room of the cinemas,
Oh
basically,
yeah, I see.
with barf bags, passing out, crosses on their hand. They were pretty intense, but with today's uh, CGI, I guess it's a bit overlooked now. It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I saw it recently, and I didn't really get scared, but I could tell that people would get scared in the 70s because it was not normal for it to look like that, and like it would look really great if I was in the 70s and I was in their shoes.
Yeah, I mean, practical effects was mainly the main reason why horror became super famous, starting with the 60s with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. That one brought in of uh, a lot of eyes back into horror, with horror tend to dying down within the 30s, with being repetitive all the way into the 50s. And so Psycho came out, did pretty good. Practical effects, the best practical effects came in around the 80s with Tom Savini, who created Jason, and made a lot more creatures, not just Jason. Also Zombies with George A. Romero with 1968's Night of the Living Dead. Uh, so there's a lot of practical effects going on from the 68 all the way onwards, all the way to the 80s. By the
So
early 2000s, that's when CGI started coming in.
so how did you get to know all these details and all these things that most people don't know about horror?
Uh, the horror fans tend to like horror movies, and they tend to watch it with friends. They tend to watch with friends, and when a kill comes out, the first thing they ask is, "How did they do it?" Because they can't actually kill the actor, or they can't actually kill whatever is on the screen. They have to make a sculpt of it. They have to make blood streams of it. So horror fans tend to ask, "Wow, how did they do it?" So that's where a lot of behind the scenes come out, and a lot of details come out also.
It really amazes me how directors and film like professionals are really good at this. Like I really look at movies, mostly horror movies, and take inspiration of them and try to put them in my short films and projects that I have in my class. So that's why I have a lot of questions like how they do it, or I try to look into them to see if it could improve my films, and it's just really hard, and I have a lot of respect for them now.
Well, a lot of people tend to start with horror movies. For example, Tom Cruise started with The Critters, and Kevin Bacon started with uh, Friday the 13th, Part 1. And I believe, what's her face? I forgot her name already. But she starts in Firestarter. Try to remember the name later on during this interview. But yeah, a lot of people tend to start with horror movies.
Do you have any other favorite movie genres that are not horror?
Uh, Probably comedy, which is a whole different side compared
Yeah,
to horror. It's a different landscape compared to horror. But horror is my main dish. Horror is my main dish.
there isn't a lot of comedy movies that are really like iconic from what I think. Like, compared to horror, you can at least name five iconic horror movies from the top of your head.
You can,
But
yeah, you can name five iconic, which a lot of people tend to dress up on during Halloween.
yeah, they dress up on as Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger's kind of hard, but they tend to do it. Sam, I've seen people do that.
It 1977's John Carpenter's Halloween was very influential. It started. They try to make like a what's it called, like a trend with holiday movies. Let's say, for example, that's why a lot of people in the 80s they had a problem with Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is a killing Santa Claus. And then they also released Mother's Day for Mother's Day, April Fool's Day for April Fool's Day, and Leprechaun for Saint Patrick's, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot. Halloween became very influential also by becoming one of the very first slasher movies, behind Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But yeah, that one brought back a lot of horror fans back to the horror genre, which also influenced Friday the 13th, which is Jason Voorhees. The reason why Halloween is so scary, so traumatizing, is because there is no motive towards Michael Myers. The fun fact: Halloween was actually supposed to be called Babysitter Killer, but they changed it at the very last second and they turned it back to Halloween.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the reason why it got super scary is because, like I said, there's no motive, so he just wanted to kill babysitters. That's what usually teens tend to do to look for money. So they tend to babysit. So that's a very good traumatizing, I guess you can say, for a horror movie, and it's it's iconic basically.
Yeah, like let's move on to another movie like Jaws. That haunted a lot, traumatized a lot of kids.
Okay, Jaws was a movie by Steven Spielberg. Jaws was actually released rated PG, thinking it was going to be for kids, but no, a lot of kids tended to come out of there crying, and the beach was actually in that year, the year that it came out, was actually uh, bland. There was nobody there. There was, I'd sense, a lot of people, a lot of kids in general were traumatized because of Jaws. But yeah, also a very iconic movie.
Um, I'm I had a shark phobia, or I had I'm scared of sharks. And when I saw Jaws for the first time, I didn't think it was gonna be scary because it was from the 70s,
Yeah,
I believe.
I believe it was 78.
Yeah. So I didn't think the practical effects were gonna be that good. But when I saw it, I was really surprised, and I saw why kids and even adults got scared of it and got traumatized from it, and they don't want to go back to the ocean or do all these things in the beach or everything. And I had a bigger phobia of sharks, and now I'm afraid of going to the beach. And so yeah, I see why people got scared and traumatized.
But props to the movie, because the movie was not supposed to be in the water. They had the animatronic Bruce, which is the shark. Uh, I believe it's run by Warner Brothers, distributed by Warner Brothers. So they wanted they didn't want to waste that much money, but Steven Spielberg was very stubborn, and he wanted to film everything in the ocean. So it cost them a lot more money, a lot more time, and they had a lot of technical issues with Bruce the shark functioning and wouldn't function properly. But if you see the movie, it is honestly one of the greatest movies that is being filmed on the water of all time, with no CGI, no nothing, 100% practical effects.
Yeah, that's one of the movies where where I've gotten a lot more respect for the craft practical effect professionals, or however you call them, and the directors, and like pretty much all the show business men. And I really look up to them, and hopefully I could do better in my projects with their help, or seeing their movies.
Well, one of the greatest to ever do it, which is makeup designs, just so you know.
Oh, okay, makeup.
Makeup designers is Tom Savini, with George A. Romero, who created the zombies. He brought in Tom Savini. He was a Vietnam veteran, and since he saw everything during the war, he was like, you know what? Let me bring it in with the makeup artist. Let me try to make everything. Hopefully, everything goes as realistic as possible. And yeah, he was basically a rock star during the 80s, with a lot of movies that he made where he was part of.
Yeah, I've. You probably didn't. People probably don't know how many masks they seen, and they don't even know that Tom Savini made them. Most iconic masks from horror, or iconic masks from horror, are made from Tom Savini.
Most of them, yeah,
Yeah,
just
and
like Jason Voorhees, or the zombie films, which is Day of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, and so on and so forth. He has a lot of accolades to his belt. He is pretty good, even though he's around 70 or 80. He's been working since the 70s. Right now, he's like around 80 years old, and he is still going hard with the newest film, Black Phone, which is supposed to come out this summer. That mask is also very iconic. I highly recommend you guys search it up. Black Phone, very good mask.
I've heard that he started a new school, right, for uh
From
makeup artists.
Yeah, he started it in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I hope in the future those students have can pass on the talent that Tom Savini had for the future of horror and can make it even better if they can. Okay, so thank you for joining me on this on the first episode of the podcast.
Okay, thank you
And
for having me. Thank you.
and unfortunately, we are running out of time, and we're gonna have to cut it short today. So thank you for joining. Hopefully, we can have you back on the podcast on
Yeah,
another time.
yeah, sure, no problem. I'll give you more horror lessons, I guess I can say, from the 80s all the way to now, which I call blockbuster horror, which is the modern horror movies. But yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you for joining us, and have a good day. Thank you for listening to Friday on Film Street.